Greetings and welcome to this Sunday service of the First Baptist Church. We're glad you're joining us. Today we consider the second word that the risen Christ spoke to his disciples. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. With these words echoing in our hearts, come, let us worship together.
Good morning. It's good to be here with all of you who are looking in and viewing this. And though I'm in a pretty much empty church now, I can picture you sitting in the different pews. And I just want to let you know that Doug and I are doing fine, and we hope that you are too. And I'm praying that we'll soon be able to get together again in person. The reading this The reading this morning is from Exodus, chapter 3, verses 1 through 11. Moses and the burning bush. Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. Moses saw the bush and saw that it was on fire, but it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush does not burn up. When the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, Here I am. Do not come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. Then he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. At this, Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and bring them out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?
In challenging times, God remains faithful, and we are given much to be thankful for. In these quiet moments, pause to give thanks for the joyful events of this past week. Let us also remember to lift in faithful prayer those who are struggling, those who are discouraged, those who are grieving, and those who are fighting daily for the healing, safety, and protection of us all.
gospel reading this morning is from John 20, verses 19 through 23. Jesus appears to his disciples. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." After he said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord. Again, Jesus said, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." And with that, he breathed on them and said, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive anyone's sins, they are forgiven. If you do not forgive them, they are not forgiven." May God add his blessing to this reading.
Today we enter that room again where the disciples were huddled in fear. After the crucifixion, 3 days had passed and they were still afraid to go outdoors, afraid to go out into the streets of Jerusalem for fear that the soldiers would see them, recognize them, and take them into custody as well. The risen Christ appears in the midst of that room and in the midst of the despair and fear and terror of those disciples and says, "Peace be to you." And they go sky high. From the depths of despair to the mountaintop they go, recognizing the presence of Christ with them again. And in the midst of their elation, Jesus says to them, "Peace be to you." And so they come back down from the mountaintop and they meet sort of in between. And then Jesus tells them the second words that he has for them, and that is simply this: "As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." Now, those words were heard by many throughout the history of the Bible. Many times the Spirit of God comes upon a person, man and woman alike, and says, "I've chosen you for this work. I've chosen you to do something. I'm sending you with a mission." And I know that the Spirit of God has said to you at some point, and for some of you many times in your life, the Spirit has come to you and said, "I'm sending you to do a mission. I'm sending you to do a work for me." We've all had that experience. So this message today has to do with those three stories. The story of the disciples, and looking back at the passage that Gail read earlier, the story of Moses, and our story, your story. Those three stories together. And we find that when we look at that story, the first thing that pops into the mouths of everybody is, who am I? If you're selecting me to do the work of God, who am I to do that? I'm not worthy. I'm insufficient. I have faults. I have failures. I have a history in my life you wouldn't believe. I have done things that you don't know about and hopefully you will never know about. Who am I to carry the message of God's love? Moses felt the same way. You know, he saw that bush that was burning, and yet it wasn't burning up. And so he went over to investigate. And as he's staring at the flames and wondering, why isn't this thing burning up, he hears the voice of God saying to him, "Moses, I need you to go and free your people from slavery." And Moses says, "Who am I?" And we can only imagine these disciples are saying the same thing, even though it's not recorded here for us. But you know, they had just been huddled in that room. They had just turned tail and run when Jesus was arrested. They had been terrified. Some of them had said, "No, I don't even know who this man is," even though they had spent the last 3 years in ministry with him. And so they were in no position to say, "Yeah, let us carry forth the message of God." But here, the Christ says to them, "I'm sending you. Let's be clear that when God lays a mission on your heart, the Spirit has chosen the exact right person to do that work. That God doesn't miss. That God's choices are not wrong. That when the Spirit moves within you, it's because you are the one God has chosen. And the Spirit doesn't care about your history, or about your faults, or about your failures. That's not entering into it. You are chosen because you are the perfect one. Just as Moses may have said, you know, I'm a murderer, and I'm out here in the desert because I'm escaping what I know will be judgment if I go back into the city. And these disciples were nothing special. A few fishermen, honest men making a living, a few government officials, and you can decide for yourself how honest they are, and a few political activists, a couple of them on opposite sides. You had a Democrat, you had a Republican. Well, you know, these things don't matter when the Spirit of God comes to say, this is what I would like you to do. This is what I have for you to accomplish. It's time to step up and get busy. But we say, this is the second point, it's scary. Those words of Moses say, who am I to go to Pharaoh? Pharaoh was the most powerful man on earth. In fact, most people, most Egyptians, believed that Pharaoh was not really a man, but was really God, taking the form of a man. And so if Moses goes up to him and says, listen, my friend Pharaoh, I want you to set all your slaves free, and I'm going to take them with me. All Pharaoh has to do is snap his fingers, and his head is gone. Moses knows that, and he's scared. And the disciples, they know if they step outdoors, if they go out into the street, somebody's going to recognize them. Somebody's going to see that they were companions of Jesus, who was just crucified. And somebody's going to know that they should be arrested also. And so they were scared, rightly so. And sometimes when God asks you to do something, it's a scary thing. Now, it may not be putting your life on the line, hopefully not. But sometimes it feels that way when you have to step up and take a stand. Or when you're the one that's reaching out to the stranger that nobody else will go near. When you're the one who's doing the good thing in distinction of all those who are going the wrong way. When you're the one who has to take a stand, that can be scary. It can be frightening. But in all of these cases, it's not the fear that we have. It's the fact that the fear only gives the Spirit of God a chance to be strong in you. The third question they must ask is, what am I sent to do? If the Christ is saying to his disciples, as the Father has sent me, I am sending you. And they have to be wondering in their minds, sending us to do what? What's our job? Well, Moses knew what his job was, to free the slaves. The disciples also knew what their job was because they had been with Jesus every day for years. And they knew what he was doing. John himself expressed it this way in his gospel only a few pages back from this story. He says, God sent the Son into the world not to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be rescued, might be saved, might be lifted up from where it is. And so that was the mission clearly that these disciples knew they had. And as the Spirit of God speaks to you, it's that same mission that we all share. Not to condemn people, not to put people down, not to say this is all messed up or this is wrong or you should do it this way, but to bring into every situation the life and the light and the love of God. To do that in a sacrificial way, in a way that says it's not about me, it's about you. It's about making you better. It's about giving you a chance. It's about giving the world guidance, an opportunity, and hope. And so let us remember those three things and not hold back when the Spirit of God speaks to you. For you are the perfect person to do God's work. And secondly, your fear, your hesitation is only opportunity for the Spirit of God to be strong in you. And third, to bring that energy, that life, that love, that fullness of the love of God into every situation to which you are called. And so the words of Christ come to us. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you. The girls are going to sing a song about that now. And it's a song that highlights some of the difficulties that are presented by being sent forward by the Spirit of God. But in the end, there's that assurance. The assurance that we go not alone, but we go in the strength and blessing of the risen Christ. Amen. Thank you for joining us in worship today. We hope you'll tune in again, and when the time comes, join us personally to sing and pray together. In the meantime, may the Spirit of God bless you until we meet again.